today we're going to be talking about our core program. And the core program is where we started, and we've got a few additional programs since then. And our core program, there's a lot of ways that you can engage with us in this. If you're an individual leader, you can just go through one of our open enrollment programs. We also have a certification process to where whether you're internal at an organization, you can be certified to deliver it internally, or if you're an external consultant, you can become certified to deliver it out to a client base as well. Or we can also come out and do a direct engagement for you. So there's a lot of ways that you can engage with us. And we also, if you don't want to just take our word for it being a great program, we also have a podcast. And the intent of our podcast is to interview leaders that have been through our program and how it has transformed their organizations or themselves as a leader. So you can either watch those on YouTube or you can view those or listen to those on any of your favorite podcasting platforms. We're out on all of those. So we're going to talk about core today, but just to give you an idea of a couple of our other programs that we do have the deep dive program, which is the part 2 and the follow-up program to the core program. And that is launching this April. I've been working on that for the last couple of years, and I'm excited for that to come out. We're also going to be, once that program is out and launched in the world, I'm going to start working on our coaching program. And there's so much research out that is coming out, both currently and research that has supported this for the last several years around leaders also need great coaches. And so our program will incorporate a 360-degree feedback tool into that program, and it's going to be really exciting. We're also going to be launching a teen program so that we really start early with emerging leaders and catching kids when they're still in those teen years, to really help shape and form the future. So the core program, then, really the foundation of all of our programs are these 4 learning outcomes. And most of them are basically, it's a crash course in self-awareness and letting you understand what it really takes to be a good leader. And it gives you some good practical keys, skills and whatnot on how-tos on how to lead others, how to be a people manager, how to lead others effectively. And one thing I love about our program is that as you go through it, you definitely are going to find those competencies. You're like, you know what, I think I already do this one pretty well. But you're also going to find a lot of opportunity for development, because I created this course. I also have I've taught it, I don't know, hundreds of times. There's still always something I'm like, oh, you know what, I could do that a little bit better. Like right now, that seems to be a competency that maybe I'm not demonstrating as well. So no matter where you're at in your leadership journey, whether you're a C-suite seasoned leader or whether you're a new or emerging leader, this course has elements for you. We do have a C-suite version of this as well. The core program, when we originally designed it, is designed for that mid-level leader in an organization. But we've had C-suite leaders go through it. We've had emerging leaders go through it. And again, it's really a crash course in self-awareness. So no matter what level of leadership you're at, you're going to find some good development opportunities in this. And again, we do have a C-suite version of it. So if you're an enterprise company that you would like your entire organization to go through it, we do have a specialized C-suite version. It's still the same competencies, but we elevate it to your level a little bit. So really what to expect in our programs is what differentiates us from all the other programs that are out there is that we take a very experiential approach to our programs. My background, I have a master's degree in experiential education, and which is basically a philosophy degree in hands-on learning and why it works so well. And so each one of our 8 modules starts out with some sort of experiential activity that naturally surfaces the behaviors that we're about to go in the classroom and teach skills in. And what we find is that when people are at play, they are their natural true selves. And it's almost like you can't help yourself. And so we have some experiential activities that they're very playful, but at the same time, it's serious fun. It's serious play, because there's true intent behind why we engineered or designed the activity the way we did, because it surfaces the behavior naturally that we're about to go teach skills in. So people are having fun while they're learning. It's not a death by PowerPoint training by any means. And then we have all these other great elements that are almost required of any program in order for the adult learner to be engaged in a training. So we have some video demonstrations. We follow a character named Manny the manager, through this whole course, and people are rooting for Manny at the end. Like they get really invested in him and his story. And he's just a really relatable leader that probably has some similar challenges and things to going on than what you do as well. We also use current and relevant case studies, things that, just so that we can see examples of this stuff happening out there in the real world. And then we also do some great group discussion. We leverage the knowledge and skills that the leaders that are in the room bring. And so we do a lot of great group discussion around on what they're learning. And so they get to know and learn and grow from one another in the classroom as well. We also give some great opportunities for personal reflection. And we know that not everybody is a verbal processor. So we give some great opportunities for self-reflection and some good personal reflection time in their workbooks and things as well. And our program is grounded in research. We didn't just make all this stuff up because we think it's fun and cool, is that it is grounded in research. And so I want to bring out a little bit of the research details just on today's call, just to support why is it that people need to invest in training. And so there was some great research that came out of Harvard University that that what is required of leaders is, and most people, they spend money on, most companies spend money on the hard skills because we have to have the hard skill training. But really what people are reporting is that their career success comes from their soft skills. And so that emotional equation, that EQ, I mean, how emotionally intelligent are you? What is your level of self-awareness? And so hard skills, I mean, which make up your skills and your knowledge, they only make up about 15% of your success. So in 2023, they reported that US employers spent $98 billion on employee learning and development, but only 27.6% was spent on developing the soft skills. And really what we need to flip that almost. Now, of course, the hard skills are important, but we also need to just equip leaders for how to lead others. I don't know how many leaders I've had go through this course be like, oh my gosh, I went to school or I got my license. I found a job because I'd love to do this. And then I get there and I have to deal with people, and so anyway, so we have to equip and train people how to manage others because it's not something that comes really innately to everyone. And so having those opportunities to develop those soft skills or that emotional intelligence is really important. So, and when they interviewed all these leaders and they asked, what are the most important factors for determining, your job success or failure, and personal qualities, how well you related to others or how well your manager, your leader related to you, those were reported 7 times more than what the job specific technical knowledge was. So based on that, this is why we developed this program, why we developed the deep dive program and all the others. I want to also give you a link to some research that just came out this week. DDI does a global leadership forecast every 2 years, and it literally just came out this week. So I had Jamie or Janine is gonna put that link in the chat box for you to go download this report. And basically their table of findings, it's pretty incredible. They interviewed over 10,000 leaders and from multiple generations, from boomers to Gen Xers to Gen Y and Gen Z. And, stress and burnout is high on everyone's minds. They also think that, the C-suite are the ones that get developed and nobody else. And one thing that I pulled in particular from the actual research study as well is that your high potential leaders or your high potential talent in your organization, they are more likely to lead if they don't see that there's a development track for them. And so here's some statistics. I pulled this straight from the forecast itself, but they're going to leave if they don't feel like there's a sense of purpose in their role, if they don't trust their senior leaders, if their manager doesn't regularly provide opportunities for growth and development for them. And it's expensive to lose talent and have it walk out the door and then have to rehire and retrain. And so the more that we can retain our talent, the better. So, and that's where trainings like Personify come in. So, all right, so that's my research spiel. I kind of geek out over the numbers sometimes. And and hopefully that stuff is important to you as well. It just really does go to show that we've got to equip and provide training for our people if we want to retain our talent. So we're going to dive into each one of the 8 modules, and I'm just going to give you a high-level overview of the different 8 modules and kind of what we teach in each one, so that gives you a little bit of an idea of what to expect in our program. So in the Heart of a Leader, we talk about how to be a leader whose intention is to look out for the best interest of others. So when we were designing this, and the metaphor of the body is very alive in our logo as well as our 8 competencies. So each one of the 8 competencies metaphorically matches a part of the body. And so when we were designing this and trying to decide what order do we even teach this course in, we really decided, leadership starts with the heart. So when we started with the heart, we're like, well, what do we want to, what are those key, skills that we want to teach in around the heart of a leader? And really when it came down to it, we wanted to talk about how do we be a leader? How do you train in order to make sure that it's somebody that looks out for the best interests of others and not just yourself? You've probably experienced that leader that is always looking out for number one. And that sends a very different signal on what they look out for. And so leaders, if you don't have a high EQ, you've got to be aware that we send these signals all the time. This module starts out with a really amazing experiential activity that surfaces what happens when somebody does something that doesn't feel good. And so through that, then all of a sudden, like it sends up a little red flag, like, ooh, you don't necessarily want to work nice. You don't want to play nice with me, right? So, and we do that very intentionally so that we can talk about the law of reciprocity. And, that's just a very simple law of human nature that if I extend goodwill to you, you're going to extend goodwill to me. And that's going to continue until somebody breaks that cycle where they send a signal that they don't want to play nice. And then all of a sudden it changes our relationship, especially if you have somebody that isn't good at using their voice or they don't feel comfortable enough speaking up, saying, hey, like that didn't feel so great. Like, what can we talk about that? So we talk about signals that get sent. So as a leader, we're sending signals all the time. Sometimes we're aware of them and sometimes we're not. So we talk about, the different types of signals we can send, whether they're self-centric, team-centric decisions, or organization-centric signals. And so just getting kind of a good awareness around what those are. We define what those are and then what it looks like, in any organization when you're sending signals. And so we do that just because we want to talk about how do we build trust and respect amongst those that we lead. And if you're sending signals that you're just looking out for number one all the time, that sends a very different signal. Or if you're only looking out for the organization, like we've got to make sure that not that there's a balance, but there's an awareness there. So we really do talk about when, thinking about the people on your team, do you have a high trust bank with them? Do you have a low trust bank with them? And then this is always a key resonating point with people in the heart modules. For those people that you can think of, if you have a poor trust bank relationship with them, try to identify what it is that you don't trust. Is it their character or their competence? And I find that if you take that really big word of trust and break it down into these 2 categories, it can be really helpful. Because if it's competence, something I don't trust, something that you're not competent in, I don't trust you to get it done properly or something like that, I can train for that all day long. But if it's a character difference, or if it's something like, I can't place my finger on it, but there's something about that guy that I just don't trust, that is a lot harder. So identifying is something that you don't, what is it that you don't trust? Is it their character or their character or their competence? That can be really helpful. Now it's not impossible to, to build and put more deposits in your trust bank with someone that if you don't trust their character, it just probably means you're going to have a courageous conversation with them. But it doesn't mean it's impossible. It's just a lot harder. And I find that really resonates with leaders when they go through the course, and it's helpful to kind of think about that. And then we give them, some opportunity to try to action plan that a little bit. What do you need to do differently in order to build more trust with that person? So that's the heart module. Each one of the modules are about 90-ish minutes in length. So it's designed as a 2-day program that you would ideally teach back to back. You can teach it modularly, but we recommend the 2-day format. So the second module, then we dive into the mind of a leader. And this is a favorite module for a lot of people as well. This one is where we talk about be a leader who's emotionally resilient. So in this module, we really look at how to, like, what are your stress triggers? How do they affect the way that you lead? And so defining emotional resiliency, we really talk about it being the ability to adapt to stressful relationships and situations in the workplace. And honestly, I could actually just take this definition down to the first 4 words. Emotional resiliency is really just the ability to adapt. There's a great saying out there that goes, life is 10% of what happens to you and 90% of how you react. And that's really what this module is all about. It teaches you about what are your stressors, and then what do you do about those stressors. And so we introduce this model called the stress curve, and we talk about, our performance over here on one axis and our stress level on the bottom. And our performance changes very differently. It looks very different based on how much stress we have. And it's also good stress versus bad stress, because bad stress is where we want to try to avoid that. But we also make an argument that the right amount of stress is actually good for you. So we get them to identify, like, in the too little stress place, like what does it look like or feel like if you have too little stress going on? It could be complacency or boredom or something like that. That's when, if I ever have too little stress, which is not very often, I feel, that's when I can procrastinate pretty well, because like, I'll do that later. I can do it later. And then later comes, I'm like, oh my gosh, why didn't I do that when I had time? And then optimal stress, you can see our performance is much higher, but optimal stress is, if you're a list maker, that's like making a list and getting things checked off, and like you're in the groove and it feels really good, and you're getting things done to the quality in which you want them done. You've got a right amount of time to get everything completed. So optimal stress is ideal, but it's not realistic that we're always going to be in that zone. So then we have this next one over called the too much stress. And that's where we can see our performance start to decline a little bit, because we're getting into close to that danger zone, where this is where the bad stress creeps in. Now I'm dropping the ball on things. I'm losing sleep at night. And then we hit into the danger zone. And that's where, it's starting to affect my health and the way that I communicate. And I go into fight, flight, or freeze. And, bad things are happening biologically as well as, biochemically in my brain. And so we kind of walk through that. And what are some of the behaviors associated with each one of them, and how do they show up? And then what kind of signals does that send to others when we're in the danger zone? So it's a great model that people really walk away with some good understanding of it. And so then we very organically have them write down, what are like 4 or 5 of your current stressors that you have going on right now. And then we we have them write them down here, and then we go and we teach some more skills in the module, and then we come back to this list later. And it's amazing, the self-awareness and the ahas that come from this practice here. So, and then basically we walk through, like, here are the 3 main skills on how to manage stress. You have to have some great self-awareness around, what is your biofeedback? What does your body naturally do when you get stressed? And then what are the behaviors that come out when you're stressed? And then we also talk about, what does your brain naturally go to? Can you identify, are you someone that has internal locus of control or external locus of control? I'll explain that here in just a minute. And then we also teach the value of connection and how important it is to have a support system in place, whether it's internal at work or external, but just the importance of having someone that you can connect with, and how important that is for mental health and well-being. So we talk about, the biofeedback and the behaviors, what stressful behaviors come out. And then that internal locus of control that I mentioned earlier is, we get people to think about, and we walk them through an experiential activity where they walk through some scenarios around, is that something I have authority over, influence over, or no control over? And we do that multiple times and have them really identify, what is it that I truly have authority over? And often what we do have authority over is our response. And sometimes it's influence, but as leaders, and the skill that we really use to teach here is that as leaders, there are going to be things that happen sometimes every single day that we have no control over. But what we do have control over or authority over is our response, and how we respond to stressful situations or people in the workplace. And that's that whole definition of emotional resiliency. So, so this team activity that we do, we have this giant version of the locus of control there. And we walk people through through several scenarios, and have them vote with their feet and place themselves where they personally feel they're at on each one of the situations. It's a pretty impactful experiential. So, and then we have them go back to that list, and then I have them identify and self-reflect. Are those things that you're stressing over, do you have authority, influence, or no control over those things? And man, the ahas that come out of that are pretty incredible. So, so for that, I tell them, I said, if you wrote authority or influence next to any of your stressors, congratulations, your stress is in the right place. So that means your brain is more wired to be internal locus of control focus, meaning that when something happens that you don't like, you don't go, oh no, why me and why me? Like what, like this stuff always, it's not the blame game. It's more of the, okay, what do I do about it? So you're actually, your brain is in problem solving mode and not necessarily brain, like blaming or external locus of control focus. So I tell people, if you wrote no control, no control, no control next to all 4 or 5 of your stressors, then this could be an indicator that you're an external locus of control thinker. And so, and for some people, that can be a little bit of a harsh reality. But again, this is a crash course in self-awareness. And that's honestly one of the first steps at developing yourself is identifying where are the areas that maybe I could do better in. And so, so I love all of we give so many opportunities for multiple little ahas that happen throughout the course. And so we just layer them in, layer them in, layer them in. So, so we have a couple graphics around like, what does that look like? What is internal locus of control versus external? But really, this is what it looks like out in the real world. Things that are outside of my control, I cannot control the past, the future, the actions or emotions of others, the opinion of others, what happens around me. Those are all things that I cannot control. They're out of my control. But what I can control, or what I do have authority over, is my boundaries, my thoughts and actions, the goals I set, what I give my energy to, how I handle challenges. All of those things are totally within my authority or within control. So those are the things we teach in the mind module. It's a pretty impactful module. I love that one so much. And I know I've been teaching this for 13 years, and it's still one when I come out of that one, I'm like, oh, that's such a good module. So, and then after that, we dive into the voice of a leader. And in the voice of a leader, we really do talk about how to be a leader who communicates a message that resonates with those who receive it. So this one here it's the beginning of our effective communication. So our voice and our ears go together because you really can't have one without the other. So we teach these two modules in tandem, side by side. This was my favorite quote around effective communication by George Bernard Shaw, is that the greatest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. And I just love it because it really does encapsulate, like, how many, I don't know, for those of you who are on this call, like how many of you have been in a meeting, you're like, okay, is everybody on the same page? We got the whole nonverbal head nods, and then you leave the meeting and what happens out there, you're like, how did you get that from this meeting? I totally thought we had a shared mental model on what we were doing, and clearly we did not. So so yeah, the greatest problem in communication is really the illusion that the other person has heard our message. So as a leader, so we bring in the sender-receiver model, and we bring in some research from Albert Moravian. Albert, he devoted his entire career to the metrics behind and the research behind effective communication. So we use this. We talk about, we've got our icons here with the voice over here. We have an intended message, then we have the actual message that we send through some kind of medium, and then we assume that the message was received. Those are kind of how communication is broken down. And that's a lot of little steps before the message is actually received. And so, so we give some great examples of this, and then we get the participants to kind of think about a time where they had a breakdown in communication and try to identify, like, where did it break down? So it could be in the medium, because if you think about it, how do we communicate the most with people anymore? If you think about that, it's a lot of texting, it's a lot of emails. I think it's kind of incredible that we still call these things phones, because the last thing that we do on them is talk. We use them for so many other things. We're cruising apps, we're cruising, like we're doing all these other things except talking on them. But those mediums that we send messages through, there's a high probability that the intended message and the actual message are not getting through. They're not in alignment. We say one thing, but it gets misconstrued or misunderstood, or taken out of context, or there was no tone, or like there, like the whole saying, "Hey, what are you doing?" Like that can mean something very different based on how it's said. So you need the tone and emotion to go with it, because otherwise it could just be like, "Hey, what are you doing?" Or, "Hey, what are you doing?" Right? I mean, same words, but very different message, right? So we get them to start thinking about tone and emotion. And sometimes we have to listen for the full message. And as leaders, we have a responsibility to the people that we're leading to deliver a message that's going to resonate with them. And so, but then on the other side of that, we also have a responsibility to be good listeners. So that's why we teach these two modules in tandem. So this is where we bring in, we do an assessment in the core program that we use the DISC assessment. And so DISC has been around for over 100 years, the DISC theory has. And why we chose DISC over some of the other great assessments that are out there is that it's more of a behavioral assessment rather than a personality assessment. And what I like about that is because, like, if I'm working with any individual, I can always tweak and change my behaviors to better fit that person or that relationship, but I'm not going to change my behavior or my personality. I am who I am. So what DISC is, it's a great tool for examining and understanding different behavior styles. So there's no good or bad styles. Just because I have my preferred behavior preferences, doesn't mean mine are right and yours are wrong. Just means that they're different. So, and everybody is a mixture of all the different styles. I love the history of DISC, so I was like throwing a little piece about this, but it was developed back in the 1920s when Freud and Jung were also doing their research. But not very many people have heard of Marston. They've heard of Jung and Freud, but they haven't heard of Marston. And the other two they were researching abnormal psychology and abnormal behaviors. We always remember the different stuff, the weird stuff, right? So, but Marston was really interested in the typical person. Why does one person prefer working with data and information, and why does somebody else prefer working with people? And then why do other people like fast-paced environments, and why do others like slow? And so that type of stuff just fascinated him. So, and then later he also was the inventor of the systolic blood pressure test, which eventually led to our current day lie detector test. So they determined, he and his wife were the researchers on this, and they determined that when somebody was not telling the truth and they were telling a lie, their heart rate would go up. And so and like, that's measurable. So, and some of their foundational research is still used in the current day lie detector test, which I think is pretty cool. And then the third bullet point of him that I just think is fascinating, he developed Wonder Woman. So I just think it's pretty cool. If you had 3 bullet points next to your name, he really, if you think about it, Wonder Woman's superpower is her lasso of truth. And if you get lassoed by the lasso of truth, you have no choice but to tell the truth. And so really, if you look at that, he's interested in what the typical person, what's true for you, the lie detector test or the truth, and then the lasso of truth in Wonder Woman. And so really at his core, he was interested in what is true for you. So I think that's kind of cool. So the cornerstone principles of DISC, are just really around understanding yourself is really it's the first step in learning how to be more effective with others. And really, you can improve the quality of your relationships with people if you understand what are their behavior preferences, how do they differ from mine, and how can I change the way I communicate with you in order for it to resonate with you. And again, as leaders, I feel like we have a responsibility to do that with the people that we lead. So, if you're unfamiliar with DISC, the D, I, S, and C stands for dominance or direct is D, I is influencer, S is steadiness, and C is conscientious or challenge. And so anyway, I won't go into the full DISC thing because this would be much longer than an hour-long webinar. But I love that DISC theory, and it really does help you. Once you go through the assessment, you get a personalized report back to you on what your assessment results are. And we also then give some great job aids for people to go home with from this course and quick reference tools so that they understand like how they can use that theory to try to determine what somebody else's style is, especially if they haven't gone through the course, to then how do I communicate better with my entire team if my entire team hasn't taken DISC. And so we give them some ideas on how to try to identify what people are and give them some good on the job reference tools that they can use as well. So then the other side of the communication module then, of course, is the ears of the leader. And in that one, we really do teach some fantastic skills around how to be a leader who takes the time to truly listen to others. So then we look at the model on the other end of it from the receiver model. And there are a lot of things that we do as humans, as leaders, to where we're terrible listeners. We really are. We think we're good listeners, but we have this fantastic assessment that we do. Often we have only senders and no listeners because we're already formulating how we want to respond and not really listening to what people have to say. So we really have them like discuss like what gets in the way of us being able to truly hear somebody else or to start understanding their intent. So we kind of surface that, get them talking about it, and then we have them take this listening assessment. And I will tell you, when people take this. It's just, I think it's 21 questions that they mark true or false. I do this or I don't do this. And at the end of it, then we have them self-score it. And what we've done, we've identified 6 different interruptions to listening styles. So there's some behaviors that we naturally do as humans that prevent us from hearing another's message. So sometimes we're a pretender where we're doing something else and not really listening to what people have to say. That this is the most common one now. People are on their phones way too much and they're not listening to what people have to say. Or we have the competitor, that is somebody who is the one-upper or the storyteller that is like, oh, that happened to you. Oh, this happened to me too. And they're trying to one up your story. We have the advisors, those that listen just to give advice. We have the defenders, those that are trying to defend anything that they hear or try to correct facts and things like that. We have the deflectors, those that like hear a message, are like, oh, I don't want to talk about this right now. They completely deflect altogether. Or we have the finishers, when someone takes maybe a little bit too long to complete their sentence. How many of you were just like, oh, their sentence? Yeah, the finishers. And then we also have some behaviors of true listeners. So the assessment that they take basically is one of these 7 styles, 6 interruption styles, and 1 are behaviors of true listeners. So when they come out of it, they have a little bit of an idea, what are their common behaviors that come out when they're being a listener. And we have more people that are just flabbergasted, completely blown away by the results that come out of that. And they're like, I thought I was a really good listener. They're like, but clearly this is a development opportunity for me. So we then get them to identify, like, how do you become a listener that is a true listener? And you've got to listen to the full message. You've got to watch for body language, their words, their emotions, the tone of voice, because like that, what are you doing statement, so much more of the message that is coming across is in all the other things except for the words. Because Albert Mehrabian's research, the actual word spoken in a message is only 7% of the message. Tone of voice and emotion, 38%, and body language makes up 55% of the message. So if you think about it, if we're only communicating via phone and email, we're already losing half of the message because we're not in person with that person. So the others, like now that there's emojis and sometimes we can get tone a little bit from exclamation points or not, and but actual words spoken, we're missing so much of the message. So again, the self-awareness of that, and then also understanding what your interruption preference is. It really does help leaders have some good awareness around the type of listener that they are. And then we have them set some action plans on what are you going to do differently when you get back into the office tomorrow to be a better listener. So then after that, we go into being into the hands of a leader and being a leader who provides direction and support. And in this module, we really do focus heavily on delegation. You know, because this course was ideally created for the mid-level leader, a lot of people are hired up in an organization because they were really good at their job and not because they have great people manager skills. And so when you go from being someone's peer level to now all of a sudden being a manager or their boss, a lot of people have no idea how to effectively delegate. So we look at that through the lens of providing direction and support and how to do that well. So we first get them to think about what are all the things that you're juggling on your plate right now. And it could be personal, it could be things at home as well as things at work. But we do an experiential activity that literally has them juggling with a group. And we see how difficult it can be to juggle a lot of things at one time. And then also getting to identify, like, what are some things that maybe I should be delegating? Because as leaders, we have a responsibility to get work done through others. And for those that are newer in leadership, then that could be an interesting new concept for them because they've always been delegated to rather than being the one that is delegating to others. So we introduce a concept to them that we call the modes of delegation and really getting them to think about different ways to delegate. So we define delegation as sharing authority and responsibility with another person. And so we get them to think about that. We get them to identify what are some of the obstacles to delegation, what are some of the benefits of delegation. And then we walk them through, here's how to effectively delegate. You first need to determine which type of delegation do you need to do. Is it more hands-on, where more of the authority and responsibility lies with you as the leader? Or is it more hand in hand when you're going to have more shared? authority and responsibility, or is it going to be more hands-off to where, and really kind of the key underlying factor of these is hands-on is really used when you're trying to develop knowledge, skills, and ability in someone. Hand in hand is really when you're starting to deepen that knowledge, skills, and ability. And then hands off is when you're really starting to leverage somebody's knowledge, skills, and ability. And so we give lots of great examples. If you're trying to develop someone, maybe they're a new hire, you're going to start at hands-on. Eventually your goal is to go to leverage with them. Or if maybe you just need to leverage somebody else that has a skill set outside of yours. So you can kind of pick where you need to go, and we have them practice then an effective delegation conversation with someone right there in class. So that's another thing about our program, is that we give people opportunities to practice the skills right in class before you leave. And so we do that through just practice sessions, and it can be really helpful for leaders to actually practice getting the words out of their mouth before they have to go and do it with their actual direct reports. So we also highlight and talk about something that we call the delegation doom loop, and how we, often leaders will get stuck in what we call this doom loop, so that they don't delegate because maybe I don't have anybody to delegate to. I don't feel like they've got the same skill set or the right skill set they need. So I continue not to delegate. So they remain unskilled. And so then I just get trapped in this doom loop of I never get anything off my plate because I'm just doing everything. And then that's when the stress and the overwhelm and all that comes in, because I'm taking on too much and not delegating out and leveraging the people that are on my team. So, and then this is another great job aid that we give them. We teach them here is how to have an effective delegation conversation. And, the intent behind each mode, the process, the ability of your delegate, the output of work, what are the outcomes of each one, the cautions to make sure that you're aware of, and then how much shared authority and responsibility there are in each one of those modes. So it's a pretty impactful module for sure, especially for newer leaders. And then for those that are seasoned leaders, then we have some additional slides that we share with them as well that are if they've been in leadership for a little while. And then after that, we go to the feet of a leader. And then we talk about, in this module, we talk about be a leader who walks the talk. And in this module, it comes down to accountability. And how do we hold ourselves and others accountable? And this one can be really difficult for people, especially if they're newer to the leadership role. And so we talk about the brain science behind mirror neurons and how our brains are literally wired to follow the behaviors that we see other people do. So we get them thinking about, like, what are some behaviors that I demonstrate that I want people to mirror? What are some behaviors that I do not want people to mirror? And so identifying that and then getting the self-awareness around, people are going to follow what they see you do rather than what they say. I mean, they just are. People will follow what you do. In fact, I could do this one right here. So if you are watching right now, everyone take your index finger and just hold it up in the air like this. Okay, I can see in my gallery view, some of you are doing it. Okay, if you hold your index finger up like this, just take that index finger and just put it right on your chin. All right, well, most people's chins are down here. All right, how many of you followed what I did rather than what I said? That's right, I saw you look good when you were doing it, but you totally followed what I did rather than what I said. And that right there is the power of mirror neurons. In that if you're people facing, right? If you're in front of your people, they will follow exactly what they see you do. So if there's some protocol, if there is some standard operating procedure, whatever it is, you need to be following it, especially if you are in front of others, because they will do exactly what they see you do rather than what the rules say or what there's, that. So leading by example, walking the talk, it's a strong message that we pull through this one. So, and we really then tie this back into whether we have a victim leader mindset, the unaccountable leader, or the accountable leader mindset. And that ties back to that locus of control that we talked about in the mind module. And that right there it's totally the accountable leader looks at a situation that pops up. If something happened, you're like, ooh, that didn't feel very good. What I want to make sure that we fix that. So you look at it like, did I contribute to that problem in some way, shape, or form? So that's the accountability piece. And then now, like, what do we need to do to make sure that doesn't happen again? That's internal locus of control. You can't control the actions of others, but I can now have a conversation so that we can try to make a plan moving forward to where that doesn't happen again. That's internal locus of control. So that's kind of a cool tie-in that we do back to the mind module. And then we get them talking about, like, when is it difficult to hold people accountable? So somebody that's higher in the organization, oof, that one is really tough. Someone that used to be a peer and you demonstrated the same behavior, someone that you don't manage or they don't report to you, volunteers, if you have to manage or work with volunteers in your organizations, it can be hard if someone's literally volunteering their time. And how do you hold those people accountable without them leaving? Or if you know that somebody has some personal things going on at home, um, someone in that danger zone. But then we also, so we get them to identify it, but then we talk about what happens if there's no accountability. So, and that's where we can really, it starts to breed the culture of an organization. There can be that victim mentality. This is when toxicity can start to bleed into a team. And this is really hard to eradicate and fix if we let it go on too long. And so if we let some behaviors slide in some people, but not in others, then again, that's where it doesn't feel good to work here. And that's when people will sometimes self-select out. And it's, again, we want to try to retain our talent rather than have an attrition rate, and have our great leaders walk out the door. So, and then we have some great case studies of some coaches or some leaders that we've managed and coached over the years. And so all of our case studies and examples that we use in our course are true examples of things that have happened out in the real world of leaders that we've coached or organizations that we've worked with. So we include some great case studies there too. So very intentionally, we build up to the 7th module, which is the spine module. And in this module, we look at how to be a leader who is courageous in tough times. So, and this right here, we intentionally put it close to the end of the module because we use all the other skills that we have learned so far in the program to really help build us up to this moment and to these tough conversations, because this is where a lot of leaders will report that they struggle the most, is having the spine or having the courage to address and have hard conversations. So, we get them to understand like systems thinking a little bit, and we bring in some research around tops, middles, and bottoms, and how there's conditions that live in organizations with or without you as a leader. But when you step into a role of mid-level leadership, there's going to be some conditions that live there with or without you as the leader. So you don't have to take everything personal, but if you don't want to experience some of those conditions or have those conditions imposed on you, then we've got to act in a way or behave in a way to where we are perceived as a courageous leader, and we will tackle the tough stuff. So that way we don't get seen as confused or powerless or wishy-washy or any of those types of conditions that can live in that middle space. So we ask leaders to bring a scenario to class, a situation where a tough conversation that they know they need to have. And then we walk them through a game plan. And the game plan is literally, you start with your intent, you start with the heart, and then you think about, where am I at? Where's my mind at right now with this? What's the biofeedback and behavior of myself and the others? And then voice and ears, what's their disc style? How can I be a true listener? We walk them through all 6 of the other modules in preparation for this tough conversation. And then we give them an opportunity to practice it. And then we also assign accountability partners. So that way, then they've got people that they can reach out to and continue some of those tough conversations with somebody else that's been through the class. So that way they have the same foundational knowledge that they can share some of these things with. And then we round out the 8 competencies with the eyes of a leader and how to be a leader who has a vision for the future. So in this module, we really help them set effective goals, understand how to set goals for yourself, your team that align with the organizational goals, and then identifying ways to stay focused on the goals and not get your energy pulled away from them. So we have some great experiential activities that pull this together. And we bring in a model and some research from Dr. Carl Larson and Frank LaFaso are 2 researchers and professors out of the University of Denver. And they wrote a book a while back called When Teams Work Best. And they developed this model. They interviewed over 6,000 team members. And what they found was that the companies that were the most successful had very clear goals for their people. And not only did they have really clear goals, but they also had 3 forms of energy funneling straight towards those goals: your mental energy, your physical energy, and your spiritual energy. Now, your mental energy is your knowledge and your skill set. Do you know how to do the job? Your physical is, do you have the physical stamina to complete the job? And mental and physical energies you can require of your people. But spiritual energy, what they found was the motivation or the desire for people to actually get the work done. And so mental and physical energy you can require of your people, but spiritual energy you can't require. It's more inspired than it is required. And then the third part of this model then is what it's called the drain model, because not only did the most successful leaders and organizations identify the goals and the 3 forms of energy funneling towards the goal, but they also identified what are the things that could drain our energy or pull our focus away from actually being able to accomplish our goals. And those companies that identified those ahead of time were able to either eliminate or mitigate them altogether. And those were the companies that were the most successful. And this is one of my favorite quotes that goes with goal setting, is that vision without execution is just hallucination. And that's by Thomas Edison. So what I love about that is that it just metaphorically just really resonates, that you can have vision all day long. Like, this is what we want to do. But if you don't actually like set it down and put it into actionable steps that are easy for your people to understand, then we're just hallucinating that that's going to get done. So I love that. I love that quote. So then we have them sit down, like, now that you have this new self-awareness around, where your strengths are, where your development opportunities are, we have them set some 30, 60, and 90-day goals for themselves, for their team, and that align with the organizational goals. This is where we actually have them assign their accountability partners. And then we kind of close out this module with them sharing out what their goals are. And then as soon as that is finished, then we have a final sharing circle and some final additional support tools that we send them home with. We have a mobile coaching tool that we call Mobile Manny, because Manny is that character that we follow through the program. And again, people love Manny by the end. So we have a really cool mobile coaching tool that is used through SMS texting, and we use that. And so as soon as the program is over, we have them pull out their phone and actually text a message to a certain phone number. And it's Manny that will email back and say, hey, which competency do you most want to work on for the next 30 days? And you'll get to pick one of the 8 competencies, and they'll text that message back. He said, great, I need to work on that one too. And then he'll ask for some of your goals. And then it's a couple times a week, but Manny then sends you reminders that you learned in the course, and they naturally organically go for about 90 days. But if you're continuing to text back to Manny, then he'll continue to text back with you. You can also ask it questions, and it'll answer authentically from our course material. It's pretty cool. We also have Angela Siebely, my co-founder of Personify. She wrote a book called The Courageous Leader, which is all around the spine module. And so they get a copy of the Courageous Leader book as well, all the job aids, as well as we have some things we call declaration and feedback cards. And those are an on-the-job tool that we encourage people to use to solicit feedback from people that are going to maybe catch you doing the new behaviors, or the demonstrating the competencies of the things that you're wanting to work on. So it's a way for them to get feedback and support from the people that are in their immediate environment when they get back. So that's kind of those are our 8 competencies in the core program in a nutshell. We do have a program coming up in March, just in a couple weeks, about, I guess, a month or so from today. We've got a program here in Denver, Colorado. And then our next opportunity for open enrollment after that is in June. And so then if you want to be certified in the program, it's 4 days. If you only just want to go through the program to vet it, or to actually just go through and to develop your own skills as a leader, then that's what we call the open enrollment program. If you're interested in even a discount code or anything like that for attending today, just set up a call with Jamie, and he'll walk you through what those discounts can be and things along those lines. So if you want to get certified in DISC, you can get certified under our license, and we can set up a sub account for you, and you can run your own reports then, which is kind of cool. They also do have some new instructor-led e-courses that are coming out, and those will use the Catalyst platform. Their first 5 topics are empowering direct reports, giving constructive feedback, conflict management, change management, and motivating direct reports. Well, that brings us right to the top of the hour. I want to thank you so much for being a part of our of this webinar. And again, if you have any additional questions or anything, feel free to reach out to Jamie and set up a call with him.
Yes.
And if you have any additional questions, feel free to fire away.